Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
No, but we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Well, Connected Life peeps, guess what? In this episode, you're going to hear not only my voice and a good friend of ours' voice, but you're going to hear Abby's voice. We are back together.
Aww. We had a couple people ask if there was like...
Is everything okay with you guys? Are you like, you're not doing podcasts together, which I think is so sweet.
I
and
love
caring.
it.
Like,
Yeah,
I think it meant a lot. And so Abby is not buried in the backyard somewhere.
That's funny.
We just sometimes there's just timing with when we need to get stuff recorded and things like that.
And sometimes if we have guests, it's like, well, we don't need both of us.
Yeah, we don't, but we do on this one.
But it's also because it is a lot to record 52 of these a year.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of recording.
It takes a lot of our time. And I'm happy because it impacts people and it makes me, I love hearing from people and it's beautiful, but it is time.
Yeah, it is time. And if you've been impacted by that time, do us a favor. Go rate, review, subscribe, and share. Go to iTunes. Write up a review. People read those things and they're like, whoa, you guys have amazing reviews.
They also share. That's like the number one way I hear that people found out about us.
Yeah, because we don't market. It's just people share with each other. So go share with somebody. So we have one of our favorite people. She's like one of my sisters.
Aww.
Yes. And she lived with us for quite a while. She's been on the podcast plenty of times with us. She is our favorite Brit.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I don't
know very many Brits.
Yeah, we just have one. We don't like the rest of them. No, I'm
joking. Wow, you're really selling it, guys.
What? You're really selling it.
We know one Brit and you're our favorite.
Ruth is here on the podcast. And for those of you who don't know her, she's been on podcasts in the past with us. She has an incredible story of personal transformation that she's gone on in our space and then gone on to, she's moving towards her doctorate in psychology.
Clinical psychology.
Over in London?
England.
Just all of it.
Not London, but it's okay.
London, England. Well, it's close. Everything is London.
Close.
When I think of England, I think of it's just London. It's all London.
I'll let it pass.
You sound very smart when you say things like that.
I is smart.
I is smart. You are cute, though.
That's true. Ruth
we are cute. What were we doing earlier, Abs?
Oh my gosh.
Ruth and I have
delightful.
matching jackets.
Yes, they showed up in matching jackets and they have been twirling, extraordinary. All my words are failing me. First, I took a picture of them because they were twinning. They were so cute. Then they were jumping around. Then they were wrestling. Then they were dancing together, singing a song together.
May have tried to recreate a 80s music video.
They did recreate a...
Baby, don't hurt me no more.
Well, really what was happening is Ruth was singing regular speed and Justin was doing slow-mo. Can you guys just do that for a second? Because it was delightful.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more.
I just love it.
I feel like we're wasted.
I watched it and I videotaped it and I'm going to post it.
I hope you do.
I'm going to post it because it's delightful and the world needs to see.
I just thought it was like, you know, when parents dress little kids in matching outfits. I was like, oh, that's what it feels like.
Yeah,
what it feels like.
It was matchy. Anyways, Ruth, move your microphone to you a little bit closer. Just move it to your face. There we go.
Gotcha.
Oh, thanks. So Ruth happens to be in town right now for just a short time. She's taking off tomorrow, aren't you?
Tomorrow. Fly back.
Well, with you in town for a short time, I just was really excited to bring you in. And it just so happened that Ruth and I got into a really great conversation about her personal life. And I'm like, we need to record this.
Ooh.
I love a good personal life.
I love exposing my personal life.
Yes.
I love exposing myself too.
Oh, just
my personal life. What?
Way to lower the tone, guys.
That is funny.
So with that said, I want to jump into the deep end of the pool.
I want to start with the concept before we jump into Ruth. The concept that we're talking about in this podcast is, where did the words go? Conflicting intentions? Is that
conflicting intentions?
Yes. Conflicting intentions, because I think a lot of people are not aware of this. I think it's a way that the world works, which is we often move towards the intention that we have, the goal that we have. So maybe we want a house, so we're saving for the house and we're looking for a house, and it's something set in our intention and we're moving towards that. Oftentimes people have goals like that and they never get to them, or they're feeling so much resistance getting to them, or it feels like they're blocked all the time. And often that's because they have a conflicting intention. So maybe one part of them really wants a house, but another part of them is terrified that they'll be trapped once. I mean, that was my fear. I'll be trapped once I buy a house, or a house will bankrupt me, or a house will, whatever the other belief is that we have. And so I would say this is human. Every human has conflicting intentions in lots of areas, but it can get painful when you have a conflicting intention in something you really want, because there's a big wrestling match and you often end up feeling stuck in it for a while.
Yeah, and you can get really hopeless inside of it when you have that conflicting intention, because it's that war inside of yourself, like, no, I deeply want this, but I can't actually get to it. What's wrong with me? We sometimes think that we're permanently broken because of it, or that things just aren't in the chips for us to be able to apprehend or get a hold of.
Yeah, and we often make up beliefs about why we can't get there that are wrong.
Right.
And we make it up because we're not aware of our subconscious intentions. So like a great example would be somebody who wants to make more money at their job and wants to get a promotion, but also and so they consciously are always like bragging about what they're doing and how good they are, but maybe subconsciously they feel worthless and they feel like they don't matter and they're not enough. So you can have a subconscious belief that is conflicting with your conscious belief, and you can feel like, why do I always get passed by for promotions? Why do people never see how much I have to offer? Why aren't people appreciative of how I'm showing up? And it's often because we are emanating a belief about us that may be different than the conscious one that we're trying to go for.
Yeah. Well, Ruth happened to discover a lot out about herself through a circumstance when she moved back home. And so she had lived here for 9 years, and then she went back in 2020 and decided to move back kind of permanently over there, and stuff started unfolding. So why don't we just jump into your story and kind of, if that's where you want to start with.
I mean, first of all, I would highly recommend moving countries in the middle of a global pandemic. Really made for some smooth sailing.
That's real.
I lived here in Reading for almost 9 years, worked really closely with you guys. You've probably heard Justin and Abi say pieces of this before, but I was a completely different person 9 years ago than I was when I left. So, I left and I was feeling pretty strong, pretty good, pretty like, I've worked on some victim mentality. I know how to address my control, have avoidance. Sorry.
Have a voice?
Avoid my
I said a voice. You said avoidance.
You did that thing, when you hear something else and then you say, what's that thing? Anyway, I worked through lots of different things and I was feeling pretty confident moving back to the UK. If any of you remember pieces of my story, you might remember that I had quite a strained relationship with my mum growing up, who really battled and struggled with depression a lot when I was growing up, and, would kind of spend days or even weeks sometimes in bed and wouldn't respond to you and wouldn't talk. And my parents got divorced when I was 13. And I was the oldest of 4 children. So I always had this relationship with my mum where I felt very responsible for her well-being and kind of responsible for everyone else's well-being on the ship. It felt a little bit like, as a family, we are on a ship that is headed for a crash course collision with an iceberg.
Absolutely.
And I am doing my absolute best as a 13-year-old
to try to get around the iceberg.
Try and get around the iceberg.
Absolutely. It's Titanic proportions, right? It's all going to go down. And
Honestly, that's literally the analogy I grew up with. I felt like I was on a boat that had a hole in it, and it was my parents' boat, and I kept trying to scoop water out all the time because the boat was going down, but I couldn't get off the boat because it was theirs.
Totally.
But they weren't fixing the hole.
And you're like, somebody better fix this goddamn hole.
I got to figure this out.
Oh, 100%. You're like, if this goes down, I go down. So that was just like a little bit of the context for me growing up. Having worked on a lot of stuff over here and feeling a lot more powerful, I thought I'm going to be fine going home. Like, I've got this. I can set boundaries with my mom. I can definitely have some like emotional distance for stuff. As I said, I moved home in the middle of a global pandemic, which my mum did not handle well with her stress and anxiety. When I moved back, she went into an emotional breakdown and quit her job and was really isolating herself, had some physical health issues around the anxiety, really stressful. Almost lost her house at one point because she stopped working.
Wow.
And
probably brought up all of your fears.
Oh my gosh.
I know that money was really hard when you were younger after their divorce.
Yeah.
And the feeling of like, are we going to lose everything? So then you go back and you're immediately thrown into all those flashbacks.
Oh, 100%. It felt like walking right back into my childhood worst nightmare. Yeah. Oh my gosh, now I have to be responsible for this person and make sure that she doesn't sink, and all of those feelings and those emotions came back of, if she sinks then I sink.
Which is interesting, by the way. I remember when you went back there and some of the verbal process you were having, it felt like the previous Ruth that I knew suddenly came out, because we enter into those circumstances and we go into emotional flashbacks, and there's invitations to create resolutions that happen inside of those spaces. So a lot of times people will even have like shame or judgment on the fact that like, what's wrong with me? I thought I dealt with all this stuff, but it's actually, oh, there's another circumstance. It's highlighting something. And I may have gone through a season of healing that's actually equipped me to go back into these past moments now, giving me enough strength and enough understanding that I can actually rewrite the story for myself, in which I could see like, oh, she's in the process of now going home to the source. And there's the invitation to rewrite that story for her.
Yeah, if I was going to describe it from the outside looking in, when I met you, you were in your little girl a lot. And what I mean about that is your little girl emotions, the girl that feels powerless, voiceless, scared, anxious, self-conscious. And so you really grew to where you were operating out of your adult self more, where you were powerful, comfortable in your own skin, had a voice, confident, knew your value, knew your worth. And so then you went to England and it felt like you went back into that little girl, that helpless little kids kind of, you can feel almost like really small. When I go back into my little kid, I'm really small and I'm like, the world's overwhelming me and it's going to defeat me and everything is high stakes and I'm never going to make it through. And my most defeated self, my most hopeless self, my most powerless self all comes out when I go into my little girl. So it felt like you went back to your little girl. But like Justin was saying, instead of viewing our journey as linear, like healing as a straight line, it is much more like you had already gone through being in your little kid and growing up into your adult. So when you went back into your little kid, you had more tools to get back to your adult.
Yes.
You had more ability. And it took a while for you to do that, but there was the strength and the resilience because you recognized the old feelings and you knew different feelings were possible.
Yeah. So anyways, you went into meltdown over there.
Oh yeah. So I was about to, now again, not to keep banging on about the global pandemic, but I was staying with my mum because we were in the middle of a global pandemic.
You couldn't go anywhere.
I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't see anyone else. I mean, I was about to have a full on.
And it was like not as loose as it is here, as it was here.
No.
So it was like you were in the house 24/7.
Yes. The UK was taking this very seriously.
Yes.
Yes. 24/7. So I was about to have a panic attack. And to kind of go along with what you're saying about those like little girl triggers, as a little girl, I really felt like it was my responsibility to take care of her.
Yeah.
And I used to have a lot of narratives inside of my head of like, oh, if she can just get to the space where she has enough money, or if she can just get to the space where she has a good enough job, or if she can just get to the space where she can get out of bed, or she can function, and what can I do to help like chivvy this along as a kid? Like I remember as a little girl, like talking to my siblings about walking around and turning off the lights in the house so that we could save money, and like was really like fixated on this idea of
how can I
fix
her?
Like, here's this person who's supposed to be powerful and strong in my life. They don't feel powerful and strong. Okay, I don't feel safe in that space. What can I do to try and fix it? So going back in 2020, it felt like stepping back into that space. Like, no, now I'm going to have to financially take care of her. Now I'm going to have to, and I felt myself in that space stepping into a lot of that control again that comes out of that fear and that powerlessness and that little girl space. She's not okay, so I'm not going to be okay. I found myself like pushing her towards doctors to try and get on some medication or get into some counseling, or, you know, just do something. Mom.
Totally. You went into that space of control, and you went into it for what? Like, what was that really about?
It was about me feeling safe.
Right.
It was about me getting to feel like I'm not on my own. I'm not lost and at sea. I'm going to be taken care of. It was about my anxiety, my stress, my de-stress. I'm trying to control this person so that I get to feel safe inside of myself.
Which I think is pretty universal for most humans, especially within our more intimate primary relationships, where it's like, we believe the lie, if they're not okay, we won't be okay.
Yeah.
Totally.
That in order for us to get taken care of or our needs met, we have to have those closest to us capable, functioning, whatever it is.
Totally.
And so it's normal.
Yeah.
And a lot of people deal with it.
So I went to that place of control, and I would say I was there for a good few months. Like,
what did that do to you as you're trying to control something you can't control?
Oh, I was spiraling into panic. Like I was crying almost every day. Like I like that word that you used, like little. I just felt really little and really out of control, really alone. I actually ended up calling my dad a few times in panic and just crying on him, which I would never have done. But I was just desperate for someone to feel bigger than me.
Right.
And someone to feel more powerful than me in this situation, which was such a mirror to how I felt as a kid a lot around my mum.
Right.
And so, yeah, all that to say, I was really kind of in that space for a good few months of trying to control things and trying to take care of things for her. I ended up financially supporting her for a while. But something that brought like a real kind of light bulb moment to me was, like I said, she almost lost the house, and she had to pay for these kind of like surveyor reports or something or other to get the house sold. And I rallied together my siblings and I, and we're like, okay, we'll pay for the report, and and we paid for the report. This is probably, I don't know, 6 months into this whole process. Wow. And we get the report taken care of for her, and then 2 months later, she has not looked at the report whatsoever.
Not once, yeah.
Not moved on it, not actioned it at all. And I remember talking with my counselor at the time, like, like this penny started to drop of like, I don't think she's ever going to change.
Yeah.
I don't think this is ever a case of her having enough money. I don't think this is ever a case of her having a good enough job or ever a case of her getting remarried and having someone else to help take care of things. She doesn't want to take care of herself. Like, here we are, we've given her something, a tool that she can use to get where she needs to go, and she won't do it.
Right.
And she's not doing it. And it was almost like I could look back throughout my entire history with her at all the resources that she potentially did have available, but wouldn't choose to use. And it was this real light bulb moment for me of, wow, I'm trying to fix something that I have zero power to fix.
Right.
And
like I want something for her that she may not want for her.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because when people, like, humans universally don't want to experience pain.
Mm-hmm.
So every circumstance that's not fun, people don't want to be inside of it. So you'll hear people be like, I don't want this, I don't like this, but then they continue to perpetuate the circumstance.
Which is that conflicting intention.
Correct.
Like, I don't want to be struggling with money, but I'm actually so scared to look at money that I'll just keep avoiding it and keep struggling.
Right. And so the higher desire is to avoid the pain of having to look into it.
Yeah.
Like I actually like so when you have this desire of I want to get out, the desire is so much bigger though to not have to feel, like Abby just said, that pain of like, oh, what does it look like to actually get into my finances or get into my health issues or whatever. And so we end up sitting with that desire and we stay trapped inside of I was talking to you the other day about this, about our own personal hell. Like everyone is in their own personal hell that they've become very comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And it feels normal and natural. And even though it doesn't feel good, it feels still safe because it's what they know. So it's easy to know, say we're in an impoverished situation. It's like, yes, I don't like being impoverished. That could be emotionally or financially, but like in an impoverished moment, I don't like this, but it feels so much more scary to get out of the chains or the bondage that I'm in by having to face my pain, work through emotional issues, talk things out and be vulnerable with people, that I'm going to stay in this personal hell. And accepting that people, at an unconscious level actually want the hell that they're in is a really hard thing to do, but it's also a very liberating thing because we go, oh, I can have compassion on you and I can actually release you to your own journey of suffering that you're continually in agreement with.
Now, I am very compassionate when I look at people. Like, I think my mom is one of these characters who had a lot of options to choose out, and the dysfunction she had felt safe and familiar. And I had to get to the place of seeing like she doesn't want out as much as I want her out.
Yeah.
Or she might consciously want out that much.
Express it that
but
she wants.
Not be willing to pay the price to get out.
Right.
But I think that there's a place of I can look back and also have compassion. Like she was stuck in trauma cycles. And so I think it's not that people have intentions to not want to get well or to not want to get out.
They're not conscious intentions.
No, they're not. Like, I think a lot of people have really good intentions. I want to be free. I want to get out of this toxic relationship cycle. I want to get out of this addiction cycle. I want to get out, people want to be liberated.
Yeah.
But there is such a cost to getting out, and the cost of letting go of what is familiar, the cost of facing the unknown. I mean, it's scary even just to get your hopes up. The vulnerability of, if you're used to poverty, the vulnerability of learning how to make more money where you're not just surviving, and the fear of what if I do that and then I have to come back, or the fear of what if I hope for that and it never works out, the fear of dreaming bigger.
Or what if I acquire a better life and then I lose it all?
Yeah.
Because some people are like, oh, I even believe that they could do it, but they don't want to have to deal with the fact that it could be stolen or taken from them or lost.
Oh yeah. I remember having way more fear about money when I had a savings account than I ever had when I had nothing. Because I was like, I'm going to lose everything now. And before it was like, I have nothing. We'll figure it out. We have to. But anyway, we'll go back to you, Ruth. So you recognized with your mom, she may stay in this cycle. I need to stop trying to get her out more than she wants to get out.
Yeah. And I need to
more than she subconsciously wants to
realizing you need to start addressing something within you.
Yeah. And it really started to open up this space of being able to tolerate more, being in that space of watching her be in distress. Like I would describe, I had a very low tolerance for it. I would either have to avoid it entirely, like out of sight, out of mind, or try and control it completely.
Yeah.
I had very low tolerance to sit there and watch her be in a hard place. And a big part of that was recognizing oh, I'm actually trying to control this situation because I want to control a space that feels really scared and really afraid and really out of control inside of me.
Yeah.
And actually at this point, that's not my mum's to fix.
Totally.
That's not my mum's responsibility to make me internally feel safe. At this point,
Yeah,
this
you're
is
an adult.
my responsibility.
Yeah.
Because I'm an adult. Sure, maybe it was hers back in the day, but
Sure.
it's not now.
Yeah.
And she, as much as I'm never going to be able to control her, she's never going to be able to be
Fix you.
safe enough and stable enough to
Yes.
fix that space inside of me.
Well, and I love this because I, again, had to go on this journey with my mom as well. I was never loving her, even though I thought I was loving her. I was trying to fix her and control her all the
Yeah.
time. When I just decided to
And it
let
was
her-
self-motivated.
It was self-motivated. It wasn't even about her.
It wasn't other-centered love of
I
like,
want
I'm
you
actually
to be
trying
better
care
so
for you.
I feel good.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Because if I really care about somebody, so when I let go of, you're fine, you can be as miserable as you want, as long as you want. When I choose that with somebody, I can actually be friends with them.
Yep.
I can then be like, oh man, I'm really sorry you're going through this. Instead of like trying to fix it for them. I can actually be more emotionally present. I can be more kind and I can be more about them than I am about me.
Oh, 100%. I mean, when I was in full-on control space with my mum, I would have told you, oh, this is because I love her so much. This is because she means so
Completely.
much to me. Was anything I said or did compassionate? Absolutely not. I was harsh with her. I was critical with her. I was judgmental. And I know that she felt that.
Right.
I know that she felt that from me.
Yeah, she could probably feel the part of you that said, what the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Fix this, damn it. Yeah. I
And so-
get that. I've been there.
Me too.
Me too.
Tough space.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
And it, as you said, Justin, like it can be a very liberating space, but it can also be a space that has a lot of grief attached to it.
Yeah.
You know, like on the one hand, I'm beginning to feel very liberated. Like, oh, I actually have power to control the thing that's making me feel unsafe, which is me and my belief systems and how I approach life. And I'm feeling less out of control because I'm not trying to control somebody that I can't make do something. But also there's a lot of grief there. I was watching her.
Well,
Struggle.
You talk about hope. In my life, when I tried to control other people, especially even my parents, wanting them to be able to have things worked out so that my life could be better, what I did is I gave myself an impossible task that perpetuated deep sense of powerlessness and hopelessness, like throughout the rest of my life, because there was something cycling inside of myself that said, I should be able to fix this situation, but I'm demanding myself to keep trying to do something. And then it said, you're a failure. You're not good enough. You can never affect the things around you. Like there was a whole lot of accusational lies inside of my head about myself. And when I was literally able to let go of the impossible task that I'd given myself, then I was able to have so much hope about the things that I can affect, because there's so much that I can affect on an internal level that actually affects my personal externals. Maybe not their world, but I can affect my world. So it was a huge game changer. So I feel like, did you start seeing that throughout so many facets of your life?
Oh, yeah. I feel like it was a light bulb in my relationship with my mum specifically, but it made me start looking at my own life in a different way. Like there were so many things.
Because you realized she was ultimately choosing that. And it wasn't the externals that were her problem. It was an internal job for her. And you also saw that with you.
And I had agreed with that and believed that so long about her life.
Right.
Oh, if she would just catch a break here, or if this would just change, or if that would just change, if this could happen, then she'll be okay. And realizing that's never going to make any difference. She could kind of almost have those things handed to her on a plate.
Yes.
She's still going to choose what feels the safest to her internally, which might be the pain that she's stuck in.
Right.
And it's made me kind of start reflecting on different spaces in my own life where I say that I want something or where I, actually really do feel like I want something. I want to move towards this, or I want to be able to access this area of my life. Like, I'm 35 years old. I don't know if it's a scandal to reveal that on this podcast. But I'm 35 and I'm single, and I'm really wanting to get married. It's something that I say a lot. And that can be a really painful space.
Yeah.
To be sat in something that you're
desiring,
wanting, but ultimately feeling quite powerless to know how to affect change in or move towards. And sure, there's certainly things that I've done that have helped me feel more powerful in that journey, like getting on online dating and dating different types of people and trying to embrace like shame-free dating. But ultimately, there's this space inside of me that is feeling really quite powerless with it. Like, I don't know how to move towards this. And it feels like something needs to change on the outside in order for me to be able to step into this. So kind of like you were saying, we've come up with all these rules and these ideas about why something might be happening. I start projecting those onto men. Oh, so men are only attracted to this, or men aren't emotionally intelligent enough to connect with me. It's a bit arrogant, but whatever. Just trying to protect my pain. Don't judge me. You know, men are only attracted to women that look like supermodels, or I'm just not around enough men, or I'm too old, or, you know, we start blaming all of these different externals as to why this isn't happening. And I remember hearing someone talk on a podcast once, and they were describing their own dating journey. And they were saying, every time I get into a relationship, the only emotion that it evokes in me is I'm thinking, how quickly can I get out of this? And I was like, oh my God, that's me. I did not have words for that before, but that is me. As soon as I start dating someone or even go on a date, the level of anxiety and internal stress that I begin to feel thinking about the date. Oh my gosh, what am I going to wear? Where are we going to go? What are we going to talk about? Is he going to like me? Is he going to think I'm attractive? Is he going to think I'm interesting? Like, how quickly is he going to end it? Oh God, I hope he doesn't end it before I end it. Like,
you already are like obsessed about abandonment before you even know if you like the person.
100%. I am in full on abandonment protection mode.
Yes.
And I was like, that's totally me. Like, the level of stress and anxiety that I feel around dating, the narrative, if I get really still with myself and listen, the subconscious narrative is, how can I get out of this as quickly as possible? Because I don't like sitting in this stress and anxiety
of dating.
Yeah.
So what you're, I'm pointing out is that the conflicting beliefs, conflicting desires. So there's the conscious part of you that's like, I want to be dating.
Yeah.
And then there's the subconscious part of you that is wanting to get out of it as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Which also add to that, you're believing the external thing is your problem. Like this dating relationship, this connection with this guy is the problem that's provoking these emotions, rather than, oh, these emotions are already here. They're being revealed. It's something that actually needs to be tackled and dealt with.
Yeah.
And so you're running from the very gift, right? The invitation to heal that thing so that you can move forward into a deeper connection. Because if those emotional anxiety wasn't there and it was dealt with, it would be very easy to stay present inside of a connection with somebody.
100%. You're hitting the nail on the head. I'm like sat across from a guy and I'm like, oh, he's not this, or he's not that, or he can't do conflict well enough, or, you know, essentially I'm saying, I'm making you responsible for me feeling safe in our interactions because I don't feel safe internally in this space. And I think going back to what you were saying about like rejection, I was beginning to realize like, oh my goodness, my pain around feeling rejected by men, probably a lot of it connected to my dad leaving. When my parents got divorced, a lot of my pain of rejection around men is actually the subconscious emotional space that is driving what I do in dating. Because I'm sabotaging any relationship that I step into before it has a chance to go anywhere.
Right.
Or I'm subconsciously not putting myself in certain situations. So I'm like, I know I don't want to go to that party where everyone's like all dressed up and glammed up. Like I'm not, because subconsciously I'm like, I'm not going to measure up. Like, and then I'm going to have to feel those really painful feelings of rejection and feeling less than again. And so much, even though logically on the surface, I'm thinking, I want this. Why isn't this happening? subconsciously, emotionally, I'm pushing this
I
away.
I avoided it.
Yeah. I don't want to get hurt.
What do you think was the message clarifying for you that you started taking away as a little kid from the scenario of your dad walking out and going on his journey of divorce with your mom?
I think I took it really personally.
Mm-hmm.
I think I took his leaving as I'm not enough to keep you around. When my dad left, he had an affair. And I think there was a big part of that involved in it, that he chose somebody else over choosing me. And there was a really deep, painful lie that began to, or wound that began to establish itself in there of like, I'm just not going to be chosen.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't even be chosen by one of the most important people in my life who's supposed to choose me. How is anyone else going to choose me?
And thinking about just that process, my brain just stopped. Go ahead.
That's okay. So when we were chatting about that the other day, what did you take away from our conversation, maybe, in regards to that?
So Justin was talking about, again, this idea of how every person is in their own personal hell, and how, kind of reflecting through the personal hell that my dad was in, his own level of pain. And this idea that him walking out and him leaving, again, I would know all this logically and consciously, but emotionally, my emotions were still not there. Like it was still a space that felt unloved and unseen. My dad walking out had nothing to do with me. My dad walking out was essentially my dad saying he doesn't want to deal with his pain. He doesn't want to deal with the spaces where he feels inadequate, the spaces where he feels out of control and hopeless and scared. Exactly the same as my mum. My mum doesn't want to deal with those spaces where she feels alone and scared and afraid. And so she's choosing this situation over and over again. Her not taking care of things actually had nothing to do with me being unworthy of being taken care of. And my dad leaving actually had nothing to do with me not being worthy of choosing, but way more about him not wanting to deal with the pain that was already inside of him.
Yep, which is something that we all do.
You had a nice phrase for it, but I forget what it was.
I talked about the idea medicating, right? And we're all wanting medicine for this pain.
Absolutely.
Especially because it feels like it's even more intense to look at it. We already feel it intensely. We don't want to feel it even more by looking at it and going into it. And so we're going, what's the medication that's going to heal this? Okay, maybe it's going to be that relationship with someone else or that other job or leaving a scenario externally that I'm in. And it is healthy to walk away from certain things. There are certain things that are destructive that we remove them out of our lives. And that's a step towards choosing into a healthier life. I'm not saying that externals are, addressing externals are pointless altogether. But the deeper thing, if we don't deal with the deeper thing, we perpetuate another potential external that's messy. But anyways, going back to, there was for you, and this is like this for so many, especially kids, is our parents make decisions that are rooted in their own humanity of their pain, trying to deal with that pain and cope with it. And we end up taking it as an identity assessment. So this is an identity statement. This isn't a statement over who I am and what my value is, rather than being able to let the little kid inside know, like, hey, kiddo, this was never about you. It wasn't about you weren't lovable. It wasn't about you weren't enough. It was really about dad is trying, or mom is trying to deal with their own personal hell that they're in and get past it. And this is their idea of what the solution is this external change.
And I think I really like that. I think this is something I'm learning on a deeper level personally, is so many of those core identity statements that we've taken away are these spaces of pain that we don't want to choose and we don't want to face. And so these are connected to these subconscious things that I won't face, that maybe on the outside I'm saying, sort of bring it back to like dating, for example. On the outside, I'm saying, I want to get married. I want to be in a relationship. But actually underneath it, I'm saying, I'm terrified of rejection because this is an identity statement that got established in a really painful space in my life where I felt abandoned and rejected and not chosen. And I am in a way keeping myself in my own form of hell, which is the pain of that experience and the pain of that belief system by subconsciously sabotaging. Because essentially I won't face the pain.
We often sit in the pain that we are afraid of.
Yeah.
So you're sitting in rejection.
It's a powerful statement.
Before, like you're constantly in the self-rejection loop and the fear of rejection loop. So you're actually in the rejection cycle all the time.
Yeah.
Which is way worse than the fear of,
like
the actual fear of meeting somebody and being rejected.
Right. But somehow in our head, that doesn't feel true.
Yep, totally.
Somehow in my head, I'm like, oh my God, the stress of going on a date or the stress of being in a relationship is so much worse than the pain of being alone and sitting with these beliefs of being rejectable. I don't actually think maybe that's not true.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that like...
I think you're having a light bulb right now. No, we often think that like, and I used to describe this to clients all the time that like, I'm going to be in a 7 of pain all the time.
Right.
So I'm going to constantly be rejecting myself and feel sabotage in dating and feel hopeless that I'll ever get to where I want to go because I want to avoid the 10 of pain that I might have to feel for a minute when I look at the root of it, when I actually go after healing for it and the thing that I'm facing. It might be a 10 of pain for like a couple minutes and then it will drop down to like a 2. So I would draw it out and you're in less, even if you go to a 10 for a minute, you end up in so much less pain long term
than being in a consistent 7 in the background of tormented
all the time.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to recognize. I know for me, even things like learning to get out of depression or anxiety, it's so familiar and it feels so much easier than to the 10 of work to face it and to move through it feels overwhelming. And so you just avoid that 10 and you stay in the 7 all the time and you feel frustrated about it. And then you create weird beliefs about why it's not happening.
What I like is that when we look at stuff like this, we can actually start letting people off the hook. Right. So you can.
What?
Wait, what? All of a sudden mom gets let off the hook because we understand like, okay, she wasn't going to be a source of safety even if her whole life changes. Like it's not going to resolve the thing inside of me. I have to resolve that. And then we look at even like things like your dad, like, oh, I can let him off the hook. These identity statements that I have going on inside of myself, they're about me resolving something inside of me. He can't resolve that identity statement inside of me. And then also we begin to recognize like, oh, I'm no different than them. Like, oh, I avoid things. I run from things too. And it actually initiates the concept like common humanity we've talked about a bunch in here, but it brings that sense of compassion because I'm not better than you, even though I can tell myself how your dysfunction looks so much more effed up than my dysfunction, but I'm actually not any better than you. I do the same things. I affect people in similar ways. I'm just not self-aware of how I'm doing it.
Yeah. Justin uses this phrase, which I think is great when he's frustrated at somebody or whatever, is he goes to me too. How am I also like this? And even for you, so like there's areas that your mom had defeat and she self-sabotaged. And now you just found out there's areas that you've had defeat and you've self-sabotaged.
Yeah.
And you had good intentions. Your subconscious intentions were good. And yet you had subconscious pain that was driving your life. And so you can begin to see, oh, it can happen.
Yeah, where you're able to go, oh yeah, me too. Yeah, me too, mom. Me too, friend.
And even as you guys are saying that, I'm thinking like it increases my capacity to have compassion on myself in that space.
Yes, totally.
Because if I'm looking at my parents and I'm incredibly judgmental, why did they do this? And why can't she just get over it? And why can't she? And then I'm looking at I then have to apply that same logic to myself. Like, why can't I just get over something? Why can't I just push through something? But actually, if I can begin to have more compassion on them and realize that they're stuck in this space of their own personal hell and they don't know how to face that pain or feel as though they can't face that pain, it also allows me to break judgment towards myself of like, oh yeah, okay, maybe I have been self-sabotaging dating for 35 years. Awkward. But instead of then having a shamey, judgy response towards myself for that says I am the cause of my own pain.
Yeah.
I can have a more compassionate response that says, oh wow, I actually felt really stuck in a deep place of pain that felt more real to me than stepping out and trying something different.
Than the hope.
Yeah.
And I was in a lot of pain. I was in my own personal hell.
Yeah.
That was very painful.
Still there.
And what we can do then is we can look at our life decisions and make more unbiased, logical assessments. Like, oh yeah, what I have done, plain and simple, no judgment on it, no shaming self-assessments. It's just like, okay, I created this.
Yeah.
It's just simple. It's I created this and I could probably change it. Because if I could create it, I could probably change something. I could probably create something different.
Yeah.
And that is so relieving to not be beating up on yourself and just being able to just take practical action steps.
And feels ultimately really empowering.
Yeah,
there was so many spaces where I would look at my mum's life and I would feel defeated. Like, why does this keep happening? Like, why is she stuck inside of this cycle? It feels like life is against her, or it feels like God is against her, or it feels like she just can't catch a break. And I certainly begin to have those similar thoughts about my own life.
I just can't catch a break.
I can't catch a break.
I can't figure
out.
God
doesn't want me to get married. Blah, 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 blah. Whatever it is. Actually, it feels really empowering. Like, okay, maybe I have created this emotional space and this situation for myself, but now that I'm recognizing it, I actually know how to sit with that little girl and have compassion on that little girl who believed that she wasn't worth choosing when her dad left. Maybe I can begin to create change inside of this space for myself,
which I love. And that is the hope, honestly. And we've been talking a lot about, we have a life consulting school that we lead as a 1, 2, or 3 year program, depending on how you want to do it. And we've been talking about this thing of ownership, and people are terrified of ownership because they feel like that means everything in their life is their fault.
Yeah.
And it's a very overwhelming shame idea. And I can't handle that. That's too much power and pressure for me to feel like everything in my life is my fault. So we're actually never saying that when we're talking about taking ownership. But as Ruth is realizing, oh, there's a part of me that has been against dating. There's a part of me, and it's not that all of her has been that, but there's a part of her there's a part of me that's resistant to this. There's a part of me that is holding my hands out saying, no, 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 no to it. And so when you can recognize that and take ownership, then you have the power to go on a healing process and begin to transform your life. I saw you do this with finances. I think finances is a great way to talk about it. Ruth, do you want to share a little bit about like your conflicting beliefs about money, and then what the journey you went on even in this last season was for that?
Yeah. So again, kind of things were a real struggle for us financially growing up after my dad left and my mum's sort of approach to finances herself. It began to build these beliefs and these pain points inside of me of like, well, I'm just not made for wealth at all. Yeah. I'm made for poverty. Life is always going to be a struggle financially. Money's always going to be a struggle for me. It's always going to be hard for me to come by. I'm always going to have to work really hard for money. But no matter how hard I work, I'm never actually going to get to a place where it feels safe and secure. And this last year, I did some financial counseling where they were really kind of looking at the practical sides of money and finances, but also how it's connected to your emotions. And really, they had this great phrase where they were talking about like, I mean, money is literally a piece of metal or paper.
Yep.
It is nothing.
Yes.
Yet it is also this thing that we are so emotionally connected to and have so much emotion around because it means something. It's connected to our pain. It's connected to our trauma. And I began to kind of look at that relationship for myself. Which,
let me just describe this. I had been around Ruth for years. We'd talked about finances for years. She'd been in pain about finances for years. what we would call like her personal hell about finances for years, but she wasn't ready yet to actually face it until you went to England. And that was the first time that you're like, I need to actually look at this thing that is causing me torment and pain and frustration all the time.
Yeah. And to kind of sort of tie it into what we're talking about, like it was the first time I was ready to take ownership over my pain in that space with finances. So like a really tangible example would be, I had a session where we were talking about budgeting, and I have a lot of emotions about budgeting because to me, in my pain and my fear, budgeting meant, well, you have to budget when you don't have money. So you have to budget if you're in lack.
Yeah.
So you have to budget out how much you're going to spend on food and groceries and yada, yada, yada. So I subconsciously avoided budgeting.
Right.
Because I was like, if I avoid budgeting, then I don't have to face
the lack, I feel.
The lack that I might see if I start budgeting, and then I don't have to face those emotions of, oh God, I'm in lack and now I feel out of control again and I feel scared and I feel small and like I feel alone in this. And I was having this conversation and they talked about how we budget to feel powerful. Like actually budgeting is a part of stewardship, and people who steward things really well, people who take care of things really well, grow that thing, you know? So if I nurture my relationship with Abi, if I steward it, it will grow well. But if I neglect it and avoid it, it will not grow well.
Absolutely. Yes.
It'll be donezo. And it was this light bulb moment for me of like, oh, actually budgeting was supposed to be this thing that empowers you in your relationship with finances, because I can see I understand it. I'm spending time with it. I'm connecting with it. I'm investing emotional energy into it by taking a space out of my week every week to sit down and look at what I've spent and budget. And again, it was that space of I didn't realize I had underlying subconscious emotions that stopped me really making any more money than I would say like I had some sort of like threshold in my head of like, this is tolerable. Like it's not desperation, but it's tolerable. I certainly am not thriving.
Right.
And it really was the first time I was able to look internally and realize, oh, actually my fear of not being taken care of, that little girl space of feeling alone and powerless and out of control with money, and money is this scary thing that's so hard to come by, made me avoid the practicalities of finances in a way that kept me stuck inside of a cycle of just making ends meet.
Yeah, it's and so there's so many things we're talking about. One, we often avoid the things that we feel pain in, which means we stay in the pain cycle. You had a lot of pain about finances, and so you avoided it, which meant you stayed in a lot of pain about finances. You stayed in a 7 about pain all the time. When you did the course with finances, which I loved, I remembered when you're like, I want to start taking power. I want to find, and part of that came from watching your mom not know how to take power, and you recognizing I'm doing the same thing as her.
Yeah.
And so I need to, and so you found a course to take, which is, I love this. I think I'm like, yes, we need to be powerful. When things aren't working in our life, there's always options for what we can do to transform in that area. And so you take a course and you maybe go to the 10 of pain while you're looking at all of it. It's probably very triggering to face all of your fears, all of your lies, all of the beliefs you've had that haven't been serving you.
Yeah.
But then as you went through it, you felt so empowered. You felt so much like you rose into being an adult. And so much of us live a lot of like I have, and me included, there's so many areas. When I got married to Justin, I lived out of my little girl almost all the time, I think.
Yeah.
There was a few times I was an adult, and then a lot of times I was a little kid. And every year I'm growing up more and more parts of me. And so that's a normal human experience. But we do have the power to notice our conflicting intentions and then go on the journey of healing the subconscious resistance that we're in so that we can actually move forward.
Yeah. I will say that once we can break through a barrier in one area, we can begin to utilize that and almost weaponize it against our mountains that we feel are inside of us. And we can go, yeah, but I conquered this over here. If I can change this one thing. I remember just the silliness of, I think I've shared this before on the podcast, but like, I didn't think that I was good at creating things, like especially with my own hands and stuff. And so I started getting like into creating action figures and customizing them and painting them and learning how, because I didn't know how to like paint and do things. And I thought like something inside of me was broken there. But once I got the momentum of doing that and becoming really excellent with that, I was like, but if I could become excellent here, why can't I change any part of my soul and anything else that I'm doing? And so like, when you're listening today to Ruth's story, like this area of finances is someplace where she got powerful before that. And she's been progressively becoming powerful inside of it. And before that, it was certain levels of emotional health that you were saying yes into diving into. So when you get to an area like, oh, this relationship with, say, masculinity and dating, like I can actually change all of that because I have a track record of knowing how to rewire my life. And so for those of you out there listening, it does, like you may have your big, enormous mountain, which is the biggest one that you feel like is in your life. And you're like, I can never do that. Well, then start with the molehills.
Yeah. Find a small belief that you can work on transforming.
And again,
I love that we all just got silent. For Yep.
Totally.
Find us, and it's true because for me, the history of overcoming is what propels me when I take on a new mountain. And you have to start somewhere to start a history of overcoming.
And one of the things that I did, and I think that this is probably kind of a little bit of homework for people, is like I wrote down the things that I had conquered. Like I made a list of it and I had an ongoing list for a whole season where I would go back to it and reflect and be like, but I did this, I did this, I did that. And so getting really connected to your history, honestly, a lot of times we will maybe conquer something and even forget that we conquered it. We won't actually have self-awareness about like, where have I come from? And I think that that's something that was great inside of our relationship, Abby, is because we'd have so many conversations about like, well, a year ago, we couldn't even do da-da-da-da-da.
Totally.
And we were constantly reflecting on the development. And so there are these areas that maybe you need to pause today in hearing this and be like, all right, what are the areas that I have conquered that it wasn't normal and it wasn't easy from me early on, but I overcame that. And how can I utilize this and point it towards something that I feel like I could never touch?
Yeah. If you're listening to this and you're like, I need help connecting to my subconscious, me and Justin run lots of courses throughout the year that is literally built on helping you connect to your subconscious and what beliefs are driving your life. Right now, you can get the Compassion Project on our website, which is Justin and Abi, abi.com. The Father series helps you deal with a lot of subconscious beliefs that you have from your relationship with your dad. And we have, like I said, two courses we run in this year-long school. So put in your mind, if you're listening to this.
If you want to get information about that, you can go ahead and just send us an email on our website and just tell us like, hey, I would like to be put on your mailing list.
Your wait list for the next course.
Yeah. Or you can actually even sign up for our mailing list there. So.
Yeah. Right.
Ruth, I love that you came on and shared this. Thanks for your vulnerability of all of it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, you're so enjoyable. And we should go have more fun. Like,
should we sing our outro?
Mm-hmm.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me.
Wait. If people want to, I want to end it that way, but if people want to follow you or find you, do you want us to give your Instagram handle out or no?
I mean, you can, but I'm not really on there. So.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't help.
Do you have a contact point you want? Do you want anyone contacting you?
You can send me an email at ruthoutramconsulting@gmail.com.
Great. Outram being Outram. Outram.
Also,
if you're a sexy man who loves emotional health and intelligence and is looking for a person, to have deep conversations with, I just want to invite you.
Sexy English voice.
Whether or not you and Ruth are the right fit, having good conversations with men and women who both are on the emotional health journey is encouraging for anyone. So reach out, email her.
Yeah. Okay.
Slide into her email.
Guess what? I'm going to go away. Yeah. Slide into her inbox.
What is love? Don't hurt me. No more.